This story is why you should never mess with the Ouija boards. We moved into my dad's girlfriend's house where one of her daughters lived upstairs, my brother lived upstairs, her other daughter lived down in the basement, along with me who lived in a makeshift room in the basement. One night, me and her 2 daughters decided to buy an Ouija board. After my dad and his girlfriend went to bed, me and her daughters all went downstairs, grabbed a bunch of candles, set up the Ouija board, and grabbed a bunch of our great-grandparents' stuff. We wanted to see if any of our great-grandparents would talk to us. We were so excited because the Ouija board was working and things were moving it. We asked what the spirit's name was, expecting it to be one of our great-grandparents, but it said its name was Tick. T-I-C. We asked it to repeat it again, and it spelled out T-I-C. We knew that it wasn't one of our great-grandparents. Stay tuned for part 2. This is part 2 of why you should never do an Ouija board. So after it said its name was Tick, we asked how old it was. The spirit responded with 9 years old. We asked what gender it was. There was no response. We knew for sure at this point we were not talking to one of our great-grandparents. I wanted to stop right then and there. I was really freaked out and I knew that we weren't talking to something good, but my older stepsister wanted to keep going. So out of peer pressure, of course, I kept going. She asked if it was human. Its response was no. We asked if we were safe. The spirit said yes, but I really didn't feel safe. We asked if the spirit was stuck in the house. The response was yes. The next thing my older stepsister asked, which I really wish she didn't, is if Tick was the only one there with us. The response was no. 60 seconds is not enough time for this story, and the story is really long, so stay tuned for part 3. This is part 3 to the Ouija board story, and why you should never use an Ouija board. So my older stepsister asked if Tick was the only one there with us. The answer was no. She asked if all the spirits there with us were good spirits. The Ouija board said no. Right as we asked that, the bathroom was right behind us and we heard a huge loud slam in the bathroom. All of us were really freaked out just sitting there not knowing what to do. The candles started flickering. There was so much tension in the room. I have never felt anything like it. That is when my other stepsister screamed at the top of her lungs and told me to move. She saw a black hand approaching from behind me and was gonna grab my face. Because she screamed so loud, my dad woke up and we heard him, so we said goodbye really quickly. I went upstairs really quick to calm my dad down and say everything was fine. But after that night, we awoke something and a lot more things happened. Stay tuned for part 4. This is part 4 of the Ouija board. So after we used the Ouija board, we definitely awoke something in the house. The energy downstairs was so intense that none of us could sleep down there. Because of this, me and my older stepsister slept upstairs for literally weeks. Remember the shadow of the hand that wrapped around my face in part 3? Well, that hand didn't disappear. My stepmom said she saw it multiple times when she would go downstairs and change the laundry. It got to the point where her and my dad didn't even want to go downstairs. The cat would chase things that weren't even there. Doors would slam. Floorboards would creak at night. My dad would constantly see my cat chasing a figure and all you could see was the figure's spine. It would run on all 4s. The hauntings got so bad that my dad decided that we needed to move out. Ever since then, nobody has lived in that house for longer than 2 months.
In high school, I had a friend who lived in this old, small apartment building. And on the first floor was this old guy named Dave who had apparently lived in the building forever. And no one really knew what Dave's deal was. The only time people saw him is when he walked outside to walk his tiny dog. But other than that, he never left his apartment. He had a nephew who delivered him groceries once a week. My friend just assumed that Dave was too old or had some sort of sickness that prevented him from leaving the house. One day, my friend was coming home from school and Dave's nephew was leaving the apartment building. And my friend is really sweet, so she was like, "Hey, I know Dave sometimes has troubles getting out of the house, so if you ever need me to go over there and bring him something, let me know. I'm always happy to help." And the nephew looked really shocked and terrified. He was like, "No, you should never go over to Dave's ever." And then he got really awkward and he was like, "Okay, gotta go, bye." And then a few weeks later, my friend was coming home from a Halloween party late at night. And when she got inside her apartment building, Dave's door on the first floor was wide open and it was pitch black inside his apartment. But then she heard something behind her. So my friend hears something behind her, but it's pitch black. She's like, "Hello?" And then she finds the switch to the hallway lights, turns them on, and Dave is standing right there with his small dog. She's like, "Hey Dave, you kind of scared me." And Dave was like, "Oh, sorry, I was looking for the light switch myself." But that didn't make any sense because he wasn't standing anywhere close to the switch and he had been living in that apartment building for 30 years. So she starts walking up the stairs and then Dave says, "I've been working on a project that I'm really excited to show you." And my friend's like, "Oh, like an art project?" And Dave's like, yeah, kinda. And she's like, okay, well, maybe my mom and I can come by another time to see it. And then they say goodnight, but she just feels pretty weird about the whole interaction. A few months later, she's at school and she gets a text from her mom that she has to work late and won't be home to make dinner. That afternoon, my friend walks home, walks up the stairs to her apartment building, goes to unlock the door, but then realizes the door's already unlocked. But then, all of a sudden, all the lights switch off. She tries to switch all the lights back on, but they're not working anymore. And all of a sudden, she's finding it really hard to breathe. She's afraid she might faint, so she kneels down onto the floor. Then suddenly, she feels sharp nails running down her back. And she tries to move, but she feels so weak that she can't. She turns around to see who it is, but before she can, she blacks out. The next thing she remembers is waking up in a hospital bed, and her mom is sitting next to her looking really worried. Her mom's like, everything's okay, there was a carbon monoxide leak in the apartment, and you passed out. The nurse is like, in the next few weeks, you may feel tired or sluggish or have hallucinations. Don't worry, that's totally normal. And my friend is like, what about the back scratches? Her mom's like, what are you talking about? So she runs to the bathroom, pulls up her hospital gown, and there are 4 dark scratches on her back. When she comes back from the bathroom, her mom looks concerned and she goes, honey, there's also something else you should know. Dave, who lived on the first floor, passed away, and they've been cleaning out his apartment and they found something. And it might freak you out, but I feel like you should know about it. Mom tells her that they found a weird box of things in his closet, and inside that box were random pictures of her, an old hairbrush, pieces of hair, a pair of shoes that she thought she had lost. And the nurses think that the scratches are from when she fainted, but she's sure she felt someone scratching her back, and she's sure that it was the ghost of Dave.
I am going to be telling you a scary childhood story. When I was 2 years old, my mom passed away. My dad wasn't in the picture, so I went to go live with my grandparents. My grandparents lived in a super old home that was built in the 1800s. I was a very imaginative child. So when I told my grandparents that I used to see people in the house, they just didn't believe me. There was one lady in particular that I would always see. She would sit at the end of my bed and watch me fall asleep. I wasn't scared of her because I thought she was an actual person. Plus, I was super little, so nothing even crossed my mind. At this point, I was like 4 or 5 years old. I remember her talking to me constantly. She even sang me the song Rockabye Baby to get me to go to bed one night. Every single day when I would get home, I could see her in my window. At that point, I thought she was just waiting for me. She just wanted to be my friend, right? But as I got older, things started to get really weird between me and her. She wasn't this nice lady anymore. Stay tuned for part 2. This is part 2 of the lady in my room who would sing me lullabies to get me to go to bed. No one else in my family could see her. She even told me that she was my mom. I really believed her. If you remember, my mom passed away when I was 2. So, it seemed pretty real that it was my mom. I didn't really remember what my mom's face looked like when she passed away. And this lady, could be my mom. She continued to sing me lullabies every single night when I would go to bed. She would always be waiting for me in the window when I would get home from school. But I figured out pretty quickly it wasn't my mom. My mom was a sweet, kind-hearted person. This spirit was evil. She would get mad at me every single time any of my friends would come over. She told me she could see my future and that I was going to go to hell after I died in a car accident. It scared me so much, but no one believed me. It got to the point where I never even wanted to go in the car because I thought I was going to die. She convinced me I was evil. Stay tuned for part 3. This is part 3 of the lady who used to sing me lullabies to get me to go to bed. This spirit was evil, and she started to convince me that I was evil too. She convinced me that I would go to hell because I was a horrible child, even though I wasn't. She convinced me that every single person in my life hated me. She even started to control my dreams, and I would wake up every single night screaming at the top of my lungs from a night terror, and she would be sitting at the end of my bed. This went on for years. When I turned 9, my grandpa passed away. And because it was a really big house, me and my grandma moved to a different house. And the evil spirit was just gone. I never saw her again. But was she really gone? When I was 15, I went to a psychic. The moment I walked into the room, she could feel a dark energy enter the room. She told me that someone was following me every single step I took. And when she said that, I knew exactly what she was talking about. After that, I went to a medium, and after many sessions with her, the dark presence was finally gone.